All right. What's up, everybody? This is RCA Apologist, and we are live with the after show of the discussion. So, y'all have seen that we went and had the debate over on Modern Day Debate, and yeah, needless to say, it was interesting. It was certainly something. Just gonna say right now that I definitely had like R and Raw vibes that I had gotten from it. So a little bit of flashback to the old days of going through that debate. But anyways, we're here. We're talking on the debate after show. Skyler, of course, he's not here at the moment. If he wants to come in, he can feel free to do so. Just to, message me and we can get him set. Or I don't know if maybe he is in the thing. But either way, if he's aware of it, then he has the ability to come on in. And feel free to do so. We're doing this via Discord. So if y'all want the link to that, feel free to message me on the social medias, on the Twitter. And feel free to join in on that. So let me also just mention to our chat in live stream. Sorry about the silent typing here, folks. Just trying to make sure to let people know that they need to have a specific role to get in, because that way that prevents us from having trolls. You need to have the live stream warrior role to get in. Speaking of which, we have the Jazz Apologist, who is a contributor to our Apologetics Quarterly that is happening here. So thank you for coming. And we have One Way. So if you keep hearing them beeps, that means people are coming in, folks. So we got One Way, we got Jazz Apologist in the chat. How are y'all doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Wait, can you hear him?
No, he said he won't be speaking. His mic is broken.
Oh. So that's how that happens. Gotcha. All right then. And
but to be fair, Jazz Apologist did say in the chat that he's definitely becoming Roman Catholic. I'm kidding. I'm just kidding, Mike.
But
I'm kidding, my guy.
He trolling my boy.
I'm not that much of an ass.
Man, don't be trolling my boy.
I won't.
Oh, man. Well, hopefully you guys are tuning in and having a great time, and hopefully we can provide an interesting conversation and a follow-up to what happened. So let's go over some of that. So, first of all, make sure... Oh, and we got Cranky Corvid in the chat as well. One of my fellow furry pals. What's up, Cranky?
I'm just going to stay on mute. Just going to listen.
Well, feel free to chime in if you want to chime in, because this is an open environment. This is an open space for discourse. Unless you're Roman Catholic, then we burn you at the stake like Edward here.
To be fair, we probably burn more of you guys at the stake, so it's all good.
Yep, that's only fair.
That's fair. Now I'm working on design stuff for class right now, so I'm going to be like half paying attention here.
Well,
thanks for inviting me, though.
Hey, no problem. Again, feel free to chime in if you want, and we'll be with you as we provide sounds and music as you are working on your project for class. Hopefully, we're not too crazy. So, One Way, are you there? Well, there's another thing. I don't know if his mic's broken too. Oh.
No, I'm here, not there. Do you want to ask more indexical questions of me?
None that I can think of at the moment, but if I think of an indexical question for a paragraphical notion, I will certainly let you know, my friend. But yeah, let's get started on this since we have our basic panel here. First of all, I'm definitely, I got my thoughts on the whole thing. Like I said, it took me back to the days of R and Raw when I debated him. Because I tried to get a word in, and there would be times I'd be interrupted, and that seemed to be the same case here. But I did find it odd, in my opinion, that he basically would have this notion, and he refuses to answer the questions while trying to state that there is no problem of evil for the atheists, even though, as one person pointed out, William Lane Craig, as a philosopher, does argue that there is indeed a problem of evil that does exist, for the atheist. So my only thing is, was I right and was I justified in trying to press this question?
Well, did you send a link to Skyler Fiction? Because he doesn't usually join. He doesn't usually join publicly accessible things unless it's like a sort of benefactor for him.
Well, I had invited him personally because I didn't know. I thought that he would either be busy or that he would go do it on his own for a discussion of a review of it with Dr. Josh.
Okay.
But if that's what I'll send it to him just in case, because that way I can at least let it be open.
Okay, do you have his email?
I got his Twitter.
Okay. I didn't ask about his Twitter. I asked, do you have his email?
I do, because I remember we were part of the thread of the back and forths. So yeah, I do have his email.
Okay. Send him the link in the email.
All right, I did. I said
the thing is, he won't come out and defend his assertions when it's in the public sphere, where there's a balanced sort of medium. He won't.
Yeah.
No atheist will.
Like, because I can understand him coming with a critique of Christianity. I can understand that, but at the same time,
he didn't do an internal critique.
Right, which I think that's the main thing I tried to imply earlier. Right. That, in a sense, he did, but he didn't fully go all on in with the internal critique.
Right. What he did was cherry pick certain verses out of the Bible without including other verses in the Bible to come up with a cohesive answer.
Yeah.
He didn't steal man. He straw-manned.
Yeah.
He always does this.
And that was the other thing, too. I noticed it's not just him that did that.
It's called special pleading. It's cherry pick. He's not doing... He thinks he's doing an internal critique.
Yeah.
But what does he do with verses like Psalm 139 or Psalm 113 through 15, where it says whatever God does is just? He just ignores those, you see. There couldn't be a morally sufficient reason for what God did in those other verses. I'm not going to even bring up that verse. I'm going to go to the other verse. It's called cherry picking.
Yeah. And that was the other thing, too, because I noticed, like, one of the questions was about, if it's wrong to kill babies, then why does God say it's a good thing to eat your babies? And I immediately knew what it was going to be addressing was the passages that were the curses that were going to be sent to the Israelites if they disobeyed God's law. And so I knew that this was coming, and I was like, oh, yeah, I got to definitely point out where this is going to be.
Well, even that's not going to work.
Right.
You do know that Dr. John Walton, Skyler Fiction, and even his partner, Dr. Joshua Bowen, know that these Old Testament laws aren't rules. You do know they affirm that, right? That's the consensus of Old Testament and ancient Near Eastern scholarship.
Yeah.
So, and even if they were rules, they aren't prescriptive in the moral sense. Dr. John Botterill.
Yeah.
Even Dr. Josh will admit this if you ask him. I've been on their own show.
Right.
Talking about this.
Right. And before we continue there, because I noticed he unmuted his mic at one point. Edward, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I did. First off, another thing you should keep in mind is I think you could have really done a better job by going on the attack.
Yeah.
Like when he was saying right near the end, look, both of us don't believe that it's objective. He said something along the lines of, both of us don't believe it's objectively wrong to, kill babies. The difference is because you believe it some of the time, at least with regard to God. The response there would have been, Yeah, but the difference between you and me is this. On my worldview, it's allowed under some very super niche circumstances, but at least in the vast majority of cases, it's objectively wrong.
Yeah.
For you, it's objectively wrong for nobody. Like, always compare and contrast and shed better light on your viewpoint.
And
if it's a compare and contrast, you have to emphasize the better thing. You can't just assume the audience is going to know. Spell it out.
Point.
Yeah, I think
Absolutely.
I did need to go more onto that because I do know that I did do that at one point whenever the questions was asked, and I just sort of made a comment like, "Yet you don't think that it is evil on an objective scale," and that really got him at that point. I felt because then during the thing and that's why I only said it briefly was because we had more questions to get to, and he decides to cut in and continue talking and try to interrupt the question thing, which again reminded me of the what was the guy Josh Brister debate that I had on our Roman Catholics brothers and sisters in Christ. He did not like the answers I gave, and he had limited the debate to the point where he said, we're doing just this particular thing. It needs to mostly be dialogue and discourse. But he wanted to intervene during a question, and James had to tell him only briefly, and he would just take these moments to just jab and add insults to me, which is again was no different than what we were seeing during the debate, because he would just keep trying to bring up like, the verse says this, and then, in your view,
Hersey, was my prediction correct? I said he's going to use your Calvinism as a tool to bludgeon you. Was my prediction correct?
Oh yeah, because I knew that was happening there, but by the time that it was really becoming Calvinism as the focus point that he kept trying to hark on, it was too late because the questions were almost over, and it was already just the audience Q&A, so I couldn't really try to intervene at that point.
This is why the best thing you need to do is anticipate, get it out at the beginning, and then just try to see if he's going to approach the point, because when he does, it's on your terms. So, for example, take the fact that he was accusing you of not staying on topic.
Yeah.
At that point, when you bring up his subjective notion of morality or his moral anti-realism, this is how you can make it important for the purposes of the discussion. You say, look, you deny the premise that God has any moral obligation to prevent or not cause evil. I also don't believe God has moral obligation. Therefore, we both don't agree with that premise of the problem of evil, because we don't believe that omnibenevolence entails not preventing or not causing evil. So the issue is moot. And at that point, you try to see him scramble. He might say, point to some kind of internal inconsistencies in Scripture. And at that point, he's on your ground, because you are supposed to know Scripture. Wherever he comes in, you could always just point out that in a very specific case, God has moral obligations that are not on par with human moral obligations, if he has any. I wouldn't say he does, by the way. I don't even think you need to give him that. For example, use the analogy of a judge, for example. Now, I can't... of course, let's say a private police force goes to me, and they want me to judge whether or not somebody should be held in one of their private prisons. That would be completely illegal, and for good reason. I am not a recognized authority. However, the difference between a judge and God is this. God doesn't require anyone to judge his authority. He is the authority. He has it inherent to what he is. And at that point, he basically doesn't really have a good ground to stand on, especially when considering the fact that people who have similar moral obligations have similar responsibilities, similar abilities, similar capabilities, etc., etc. Since God is far beyond us in terms of that, we have to proceed with a lot of caution before coming up with one conclusion or another. So that would be the biggest difference. And he might come into And at that point, you got more stable ground to essentially work on.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Yeah, a bit. Yeah, and I do need to take that into consideration. So
Yeah, when I found out you were debating Skyler today, I was like going to Twitter. I sent you a list of points to remember, and I don't think you got a chance to read them because you were just preparing. But I kind of
saw them
predicted
a little
it would.
bit. Yeah. And I
I
took a
kind
little
of
bit of
predict.
it into consideration
Hmm.
because
Yeah,
they were very good points.
right. And also, people underestimate the objection from people usually lay down moral skepticism, not moral skepticism, skeptical theism. But remember, even this is one of the few theodicies in response to the problem of evil that is explicit in the Bible, which is my ways are not your ways. And God also goes into great detail about how Job is not in an epistemic position to decree that God is not in a morally right place to make a kind of critique
Right.
against God.
Yeah.
So if you're really serious about having a theodicy and an answer to the problem of evil based on scripture, there's a vast literature on skeptical theism, and I would suggest reading up on it.
What? Just out of curiosity, I know Skyler is not bright enough to know any of this because he doesn't actually read any of this shit. But what is your response to the Pandora's box objection, Max?
Pandora's box objection. So can you go through with it for the audience and for me? Because I actually don't know.
Okay, so it's presented by Stephen Law as a defeater against the skeptical theistic position because the rejoinders presented by the skeptical theist seems to open what is called a Pandora's box in such a way that we could actually defend a deceptive God using skeptical theism. That's essentially what he's getting at. Any epistemic limitations, any moral skepticism could lead us to the scenario where we're actually defending an evil God. Because if you say, why is that God evil? Well, he has morally sufficient reasons for being an evil God.
Yeah.
That sort of a thing.
Oh, I see.
So
So at first blush with the. I'm sorry. You want to move on? I do have an answer, and I'll make it.
Yeah, you go ahead. You go ahead. Sorry about that.
Okay.
All right. So I'd say this. I'd say that an evil God has an inherent contradiction in so far as an evil God seems to bring about an inconsistency. Evil is by nature. Evil, as I understand it, is self-harm. It's limiting in a sense and you do have ancient dialogues like Plato. He kind of gives the example of somebody who lacks so much virtue as to do whatever he pleases without anyone stopping him. Which, if that is the case, then it should apply more so to such an evil God. Now, if maybe there might be morally sufficient reasons why an evil God is, let's say, not causing self-harm. But even at that point, one can still make the case that for whatever morally sufficient reason such a God has to commit an evil against a finite creature, he has an infinitely greater reason to commit an evil action against himself, because he's to a much greater degree of being. So, in other words, why attack somebody else who is a finite being and cause evil to a finite being when you could cause even greater evil to a more infinite? And you don't really kind of have that parallel with a God who isn't infinitely good.
I totally get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a strange. So it doesn't seem like that it's not even analogous at that point.
Right.
You'd have to ignore all the properties that make it what it is. It's kind of like it was in an interesting discussion with in another chat room on Discord, where somebody was debating, well, couldn't God make like a unicorn that excretes healing properties? And then when you narrow down, you start analyzing the analogy, suddenly the unicorn, I guess, has to like grow aloe vera. It like it literally has to become something that wouldn't actually be considered an animal. And so it becomes entirely disanalogous. I think that's what you're saying here, right?
Yeah, in essence, the analogy doesn't hold between the properties of goodness and the properties of evilness.
Right. Now, do you take the position that evil is the privation? Is that your view, Maximus?
I actually think a lot of I think aside from consequentialism, any form of deontology or virtue ethics boils down to that. So, for example, you are a divine command theorist, then yeah, in a sense, it is a privation. But it's the privation of being something commanded by God or being approved upon by God. Okay. Whereas basically it's something which has an absence of the purposes God wants. Whereas with something like virtue theory, something along the lines of evil is a privation of the good in the character of people, then yes, that is another way of just weeding out the privation theory. So I am a privation theorist. Okay. I think it holds for pretty much anyone natural law, virtue theory, or divine command theorist.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask this question regarding the argument that I did use. And hold up, let me just make sure to handle that. So the tri-perspectival defense that I used from John Frame, since I know we have one philosopher buff in here, what are y'all's thoughts on that particular defense that was utilized, as I explained it and tried to utilize it in the defense, regarding why evil exists and how God can utilize evil for his own purposes, which can result in a greater good?
Yeah, I don't think you emphasize the greater good element of the defense. So from what I see, when Skyler brought out, what do you tell a woman who was raped? Like, that's a very, very charged thing to bring out, and a very good emotional tactic.
Yeah.
So what I would have said if I was in your position was some lines. Look, when it comes to why God chose to decree such a thing in his divine plan, I don't know. I'm not really in a position to know. That's something I leave up to God. But here's the thing. I don't limit God's omnipotence and his power. I believe that there is no evil so great that from it he couldn't bring about a greater good, while at the same time drawing every tear from which that evil sheds. However, under Skyler Fiction's point of view, he has to say that not only does your rapist get away with that, but even if he does jail time,
it's even worse. On his view, emotions are just chemical reactions. That's it.
Not only is it a chemical. Well, here's the thing. Even forget just boiling it down to chemical reaction. If we're going to make it an emotional thing, then even if the rapist gets killed or goes to prison, like after some time, he's still going to be a rapist. He's still going to have that evil on him.
That's true. Yeah.
He's still going to be, and he's still going to be on the ground, or he's still going to be buried in the ground. The only real thing that you have hope in is God. Whereas under Skyler Fiction, not only did the rapist commit no actual moral atrocity, no objective moral atrocity, he could be in a position where he can get away with it. He could even commit his action, and if he's good with committing suicide, just kill himself, not even face any consequences.
So
some might even get away with
okay,
it. Like
maybe I can give
Skyler
it an
has a lot more
analogy. Maybe I can give it now. It would be like a plaintiff in the court saying, "I don't remember, or I don't know what I did was wrong. Now prove to me that it is wrong what I did. I don't remember that I actually did that, so that you should let me off the hook," sort of thing, right? I mean, to me, that's what moral anti-realism would suggest. You have examples of this where people plead, right, insanity, and they aren't actually insane. They just use it as a way to get out of the charges, and then escapism uh, of their responsibility. Would you agree with that, Max? It seems to me Skyler's position is basically that. If you ask Skyler, on your worldview, how do you determine what is right or wrong? He's going to say, well, he's going to give us a utilitarian ethic. And I'm going to point out that utilitarianism works just fine for masochists. And then he's going to say, well, no, now I have to cherry pick. That's not going to work on my ethic. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm. By the way, I don't know if he'll be joining, but Apologia Hetami, which on Twitter he's known as Shane, and he is a contributor to the Apologetic Central blog. Try to see if he could come in to try to give a review of the debate. And he's got to be heading to bed soon over in where he's at. But I did want to read something that he said that I think is interesting for the audience and everyone else here. There is a judgment day for everyone. He, referring to Skyler, will be judged for it. But if he is a true Christian and has repented, referring to if he does convert and become a believer, then he is also forgiven. He elected Paul, and Paul murdered hundreds, if not thousands. So I say definitely we need to keep Skyler in prayer and hope that throughout the experiences he has in dealing with Christians, that he comes to the truth of the knowledge of salvation that is found through our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Not through Raptor Jesus as he promotes, but through the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, the actual Jesus.
Well, part of being a Christian is willing to look good for everyone. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll be right back. Y'all carry amongst yourselves because my arm is sore and I need my elbow support brace. Old.
So, we still.
Huh?
I think we are, but I'm not.
Shared it out with as many as I can. I don't know if it's just a thing on me because I seen we had like 3 different kind of people commented, but it's only been stuck on a one.
Oh, by the way, Jazz Apologist is out.
And he is a part of the Apologetics Quarterly that we are doing. So extend a couple of our articles from me and one from, including Jazz article. We have about 46 pages of content alone, and we still got plenty more to put on there with several other apologists in the forefront. So hopefully that we can get this going and ready by the time we get to July, because by the time that comes around, that's when we'll be doing those kind of things. Who's Afea? And let me just ask you, who's Afea? He's another guy in the chat, by the way, folks. Are you able to use your mic, or do you want to just limit yourself to the text chat? Because I got no problem reading, but I want you to be as comfortable as you can. So if you want it to be easier and to just talk through the mic, feel free to do so. And also check in the chat. Well, Bob said he missed the debate. There's a reason I did leave it in the chat for the link, so feel free to go back and watch it if you need to. Oh, his mic's got a lot of background noise.
I think you could have done a lot better. For example, when you brought up Calvinism.
Right, yeah.
You should have just pointed out the topic isn't Calvinism. It's about could an omnibenevolent God be evil? That's the real question.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, though. In terms of how one wants to formulate the objection concerning the problem of evil, Skyler isn't formulating it necessarily against every conception of God, but specifically the one a Reformed Christian apologist believes in. So if he sees God through the Reformed lens, then that's God as Skyler has to critique. So I think he needs to address specifically Calvinism, and I don't think it is irrelevant.
Okay.
But this is what I would have said. But this is what I would have said.
Okay.
However, I would say.
Hold on,
sorry.
real quick.
Okay, fair enough.
I sent him Oliver Crisp, Richard Mueller, and Guillaume Billon's book on Calvinism.
And yet he tried to talk about
I actually was on his show explaining how you could be a libertarian holding to Calvinism. So
that is
there's no fucking excuse on
Whoa,
language, sir.
There's literally no excuse on his part here. I'm just pointing. Look, I could send you a screenshot of my email where I sent him these books. I said, read them. He's never read. He has zero inch. It's like the jazz apologist said, right here in the chat. Skyler probably has read 0 books on Calvinism. Yeah, I could send the books to him, and he has read none of them. I told him, read these. At least you could be stronger in your apologetics against Calvinism, but he hasn't.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, so fair enough. You know what? And that is exact. And I'll grant you that. Critiquing specifically one Calvinist's conception of Calvinism doesn't really do the Calvinism in general justice. I'll grant that. However, in terms of even defending the more compatibilist Jonathan Edwards' conception of Calvinism, one that's defended rather well by guys like Paul Helm, and I'm actually going to reference Helm's work on this one.
Yep.
Helm actually has the best defense of compatibilism, which is, look, I believe that God determines everything. You believe that nature determines everything. We both believe people need to be held morally. Well, Skyler doesn't really fit into this book, but one could. But essentially, a lot of people, most atheists believe some form of compatibilist free will is necessary, and they believe that people can be morally appraised based on a compatibilist worldview.
Right.
So
no, I get you, but
by what? So,
but Skyler has no excuse. I sent him all of this information. He has no excuse.
Right. I'm not saying Skyler does or doesn't have an excuse. I'm saying
I'm saying he has no excuse. I sent him the book. Do you want the email? Do you want me to screenshot my emails where I sent him these books?
I'm not denying this. I fully believe you.
I will prove it.
Well, he's not denying it, dude. So just chill, man.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, don't worry. All I'm saying is there's a really good RCA. If you want a really good defense, and of the compatibilist variety of Calvinism, then against the atheist objection, I would say that what you can do is take this line of reasoning that Paul Helm uses. He specifically says what criteria can an atheist be a compatibilist about free will, but as a Calvinist, I cannot. What's the difference between material existence dictating human freedom and thus bearing consequences, and just matter in motion determining that? If they can't produce, and if they can't produce a sufficient reason, then they have no place to stand. However, if they deny free will at all and are just strict determinists, then that just means that they're going to have to bite a harder bullet, which is no rapist, serial killer, murderer can ever, in any circumstance, be held liable for the evil they do. It's just a matter of programming robots, and that is far more dehumanizing than Calvinism. If you want to object, like personally, I don't like compatibilism of any variety, but at least I'm in a better position to critique it than somebody who's in Skyler's position.
Okay,
that's
Max,
kind of the apologetic idea.
Would you agree that at least from a personal, a personalist compatibilist position makes a hell of a lot more sense than some sort of a indeterminist or impersonalist sort of compatibilist position? And then secondarily, the book that I sent, Skyler Fiction, was endorsed by Paul Helm. It was by Guillaume Bion, right?
Yeah.
Excusing Sinners and Blaming God, a Calvinist assessment of divine determinism and God's involvement in evil. He didn't read it. He's not interested in learning it.
Yeah.
Right. It's right. And at that point, I'm getting a bit of feedback from LL Digital.
Yeah. Oh, hey LL, how you doing?
Oh, hey, what's up?
What's up, girl?
We're getting some feedback.
Yeah, we get some feedback. You on speakerphone?
Yeah.
That might be it.
Hold on. Maybe. I don't use Discord all that often, so I just do not know how to do certain things. I apologize.
Nah, you good. Just there might be a thing, like if you tried not to use the video thing, but just the audio thing, there might be like a thing where it shows to use the audio, like if you're just on a basic call, not the speakerphone. So you might have to try to work and find that one. Let me see.
I'm also work.
You're what?
All right. Are you still getting feedback?
Testing, potato. A little bit.
You have a pair of headphones.
Huh?
Yeah, I do.
Oh.
Are you?
No.
Put in your headphones, and then it should be.
All right.
Alright, we are working on the case with the power of technological repair, sufficiency, surgical, making words up, gibbity glop glue, boom. Oh snap, it actually went. It's like I was saying an incantation or a spell or something. Alright. So yeah, I think we're good on that. Can you hear us, Digital?
Yes.
Alright. Whoa! That is loud and clear! Nice! Alright. Oh, and we are also joined in by Bob. Wow, we are getting some people coming in our way. I tell you what, like a Louisiana crawfish boil about down here. Hey, Bob, how you doing? Alright, he might be AFK a bit, or he might be driving. Don't want to disturb that. Anyways, so we got Digital, Bob, One Way still here. Jazz apologist, though he'll be texting, chatting. Cranky Corvid seems to be gone AFK because not only the mic muted, but also the sound muted. But again, y'all want to join in, feel free to do so. Just let me know, and I'll get you the link to join into the chat. Oh, and who's a fail? Man, I am missing a lot of things here.
There you go. Is it working?
Oh, yeah. Now we can hear you, Mike. So, yeah, that's everything y'all said so far, I think I get some good points. But I do also want to get, because I know that she was watching digital. What were your particular thoughts on the whole thing in the debate? Because I know there's some people that
It was a disaster.
Yeah. That's the thing. I made a couple of mistakes on my own thing, but I think at the same time, Skyler should have been a little more charitable. And during the whole audience Q&A thing, it wasn't often, but there was a couple times that it tended to get to the point where it was mostly a rant in between, and it wasn't usually whenever he made an answer to a question. Like, it was a question for me and I'd answer it. He cuts in with something that he then goes on a rant about. I give the answer, man. Just let the person then get to the next question, because I want really trying to do the same thing with him, because I could have, and I did it just briefly, but again, only briefly. But he gives the answer unless I'm told, hey, can you provide your intake on this? If I'm not asked that, I shut up and let the next question get answered, because people want to hear the answers to some of their questions, and they may not have the time to do so at a certain point. So I don't know. Like I thought it was a bit rude. It took me back to the time I debated R and Raw, and I thought that he interrupted way too much and sort of got onto different things. But the one thing that I still don't get is that whenever I was asking him questions regarding his particular view, because again, he's saying, actually stuck on the topic, and I asked him, what do you want me to even then ask if you're suggesting that these aren't on the base of the topic? And I was asking moral questions, and he said I needed to ask moral questions. And I asked him moral questions. I asked, do you think that this is wrong? In fact, I still actually have the questions on my thing, I believe. I asked the issue of, ultimately, if what we are saying is just our emotions or opinions that we are expressing on how we view certain things, should we follow our emotions? Ought we to follow our emotions? Are we to go after and view our emotions and act upon them? And he was asking, how is this related? And that was, again, point of the issue is that if we are to follow it, hence the issue of the emotivist position, why should we if our emotions aren't truth apt? If they aren't statements that are, making something on the issue of if something is true or false? I mean, there was problems in what he was suggesting as the alternative, which that was the other thing too, that he claims that he wasn't making any claims, but he did claim that there is no such thing as evil. Evil does not exist. It is something that the word evil exists, but ultimately it's just what we attribute it based off of our expressions and our emotions, what we describe something as evil, and it's only evil in the sense of the individual that declares something to be either evil or right. And again, I asked these questions and would kept saying that I'm not sticking to the debate of the topic, and that it's not up to him to provide the issue of the burden of proof on the problem, that it's up to me, which I did deny that. I do believe that it's up to me to provide my burden of proof, but at the same time, if he's making a claim regarding the fact that evil does not exist, he needs to defend that assertion. And hence, one of the questions I was actually going to ask, if I got to it, was, that if, would your desire on doing an internal critique of these different religions, is this an admission on the fact that you don't have an articulated response to the problem and just want to focus more on that without having to defend your side? that was going to be one of the questions I get until we get into some of these things. So I don't know. Let me ask the atheist in the chat, because I don't know what his particular view is. But let me get his response on that. See what that leads us into. Bob, what would you say your whole thing? Would you identify with the emotivist view, or do you have a different kind of subjective view?
I don't know what a emotivist is, but
well, essentially, it is the statement that states that evil does not really exist. Evil does not exist. The word evil exists, and the word evil is what we use to describe things we express or have
like
emotions
saying boo.
towards.
Evil is like me saying boo, that's bad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe evil exists.
There's no truth value. It's not truth value. It's just boo, that's bad.
Okay. And so you would say that there is no evil, Bob?
I don't believe an actual evil exists.
Okay, so that you don't believe that an actual evil exists. So that when we see something then that we would say is wrong. So like, for example, if a school shooting happened, or the more recent thing, the mall in Arizona that got shot up, should we say then that is not evil if it doesn't exist, or how do we go about explaining this particular issue?
Well, evil, it was an act that was performed people, and people, for whatever, perform that act. It goes against people's well-being.
Mm-hmm.
It diminishes people's well-being. I would say that is not a good thing. That we need to take measures to try and prevent those things. If we have to put those people away to prevent them from doing that again,
Mm-hmm.
that's why we lock people up. It's not to. It's to separate them from the rest so they don't hurt more people.
Right, and I think this is what the question
here's
I'm
a
trying
question.
to get to with Skyler at one point, which wasn't getting answered, was the issue of, ought we to do that? Like, should we do that to, lock them up and, prevent this from happening? And my question would be, why do we need to act upon that if we should do it, from our perspective, at least in the emotivist sense?
Yeah, I mean, here's my problem with the whole we do that to avert bad consequences argument. Let's say, for example, we knew for a matter of fact that we could send one innocent man to jail, and by doing, just to set an example of deterrence, it's purely ethical. And by doing that, we know 50%. We'd see a 50% in crime rate, and it would deter that many more people from committing an act of injustice. Should we send an innocent man to prison on that basis? It's just one. If you actually analyze the consequences, you'd actually have better consequences by robbing that person of their right to due process, at least under human law. So would that be the right thing to do? And if not, then it doesn't seem like we do that because of consequence. We do that because we have some obligation to that person not to do that. On the other hand, if it is right, and we can just send innocent people away, on the supposition we provide enough proof, then doesn't that sort of show, not that there's some, then why isn't there actual debate over whether or not we should be doing that? Why don't people consider that to be a viable alternative? At least worthy for discussion.
I guess it's because you send an innocent man to jail, actually harming their well-being, more or less. And,
yeah, but we prevent far more well-being from being harmed by doing so in this hypothetical.
It doesn't matter. You don't. You're not doing well. You're not doing a good thing, right? You're doing something that's not good. I mean, yeah, you might have a good outcome, but doing something bad to accomplish something good is for good.
Right, but then
Okay, then we're both. But then we're both. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Reformed Apology.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, then you would agree with us. We don't just send people to prison based off of preventing bad consequences from occurring. We do that because we see that there's an obligation to send bad people to prison, that there's an obligation to punish the wrongdoer. And if that's the case, then it's not just a bad consequence.
I don't think it's a punish. I mean, in a way, I'm sure it started out that way. It probably is that way. Both still want to punish, but I think it's wrong. I don't think people punishing them really doesn't accomplish anything. So the time it makes them worse.
Sometimes it does, but we agree that. Well, sometimes we do agree, though, that some kind of retribution is. And it's retribution for its own sake. It's not because of the consequence, though. It's because we tend to view some crimes as worthy of retribution and not because of the consequence. Consider it as kind of an analogy of setting balance to the world, or what when somebody does something that's wrong or evil or wicked, they have made the world more evil or wicked. And what we want to do is make sure that that person is met out with their fair share of the evil, since they have taken it upon themselves to increase the amount of evil in the world. And that's basically why I see retribution as being warranted. And if it was just the case that it was about consequence, then of course we could see circumstances where innocent men can be put to prison, hypothetically at the very least, which I think that doesn't jive with most people's moral conclusions, however they came about them.
If you're gonna put an innocent man in prison, you're doing something wrong, so you should be stuck in prison also. Does the cycle stop?
I agree. In fact, that's why if somebody conspires to put an innocent man to prison, like let's say with a false accusation, and we find out about this, then not only should that person bear their fair share of the punishment, but even a worse one, considering they've exacted not only evil to that person, but also making the justice system kind of a weapon. So yeah, I would agree that that kind of retribution is warranted, not because we want to prevent, not just because of deterrence, although I think deterrence is a factor, but because of the fact that we are doing our responsibility in the world when it comes to evil. And that's why I don't buy the idea that it's just about exacting the it's just about exacting a consequence.
I know that's not the way the prison system is made. It's stuck on this archaic thing, If he does something bad, we have to punish them. We have to get back at them. We have to perform justice.
Wait, question: why is something archaic necessarily wrong? I mean, there are a lot of old beliefs, but it doesn't mean. But just because a belief is old, doesn't mean by dint of it being old it is wrong.
I would have said antique if I meant just old. Archaic is different meaning. Yeah, I differentiate the two.
Oh, right, fair enough. By archaic, I assume you mean outmoded or obsolete.
Yeah, and ill-informed, because as we go along, we learn more things, so we have a better understanding.
So what about the modern world does it make? So what about the modern world, as it differs from the ancient world, does retribution no longer come into play? So in the ancient world, so even up till now, because of what we've been handed down from the ancient world, we exact retribution as part and parcel of punishment. As a way of setting the balance in order. However, you're saying it's archaic in that there has been some state of change or development where we realize that such a thing is obsolete. Why is that? Like, what has changed things to make that notion obsolete, when I'm arguing that it's not just to exact some kind of consequence or to bring about some kind of consequence. It's an obligation we have in the justice system, or when thinking about justice.
The justice system is the way you're describing it, and I think it needs to change. So I'm not saying the way the way I'm describing it is the way it is now. Because it sounds like you're saying I'm saying it's this way now, and it's changed. And I'm like, no, it hasn't.
No,
Still
I'm not
running
saying
off the old system. Yeah.
Oh no, I'm not saying you're saying it's changing. What I'm saying is something is what you're saying. So you believe that that retribution in the modern criminal justice system is archaic, and by archaic, obsolete. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So when something becomes obsolete, it means it's been surpassed by something else. So, for example, what made the what? So, for example, what made the home phone obsolete? Mostly obsolete now. Some people still have some reason to have it, but even better yet, the typewriter. What made the typewriter obsolete? The computer? Yeah, we have something that surpassed it. But what makes a retributive justice obsolete?
That's a good question.
I don't know. I haven't given a whole lot of thought to it, but I would say a system locking people up doesn't do any good, right? If there's no physical harm, and people should work, reimburse the people, right? You got to pay the restitution, make the people whole again, whatever wrong you did. It's because what happens is somebody steals your car, you go to jail, but they do. But if you had insurance and your insurance company gives you some money, you're kind of compensated. But I think there needs to be a system set up where violent ones that are harming people need to be kept away so they don't harm people anymore. Ones that intentionally harmed, they should have a job in there too. So they're paying these families that they harmed, right?
Okay, so I think the issue you're getting at is there's something wrong in the criminal justice system where I don't think your actual issue is with the notion of retribution. I think your actual issue seems to be rates of recidivism. The idea that, well, people get locked in prison, and because of their experience, they come out, but they end up going back in and becoming much worse. I don't disagree. I think there are a lot of criminals the justice system lets down, and I think that the recidivism rate is too high. But I don't see how we get from there to there should be no concept of retribution in the criminal justice system. Because at the very least, one can do both. And I actually think that there are some people that I wouldn't care if they just brought it in there anyway. Certainly there should be some degree of criminal who should definitely not be out of prison. I think if you're a serial killer, for example, I don't care about recidivism rates. You are definitely exacting some form of retribution by either putting you in there for life, if we're not discussing the death penalty. So that's what I think of the matter. I think we both would agree with at least the prospect that recidivism has to be dealt with in a much healthier way. But I'm not sure I would go so far with you as to say that no concept of retribution should be considered when thinking about criminal justice.
Okay.
Maybe to simplify it a little more, my question just is, can't we just have recidivism? Can we just deal with rates of recidivism and deal with retributive justice at the same time? Can't we just exact some kind of a punishment for the sake of setting balance to the evil that's been exacted in the world, while at the same time helping that person after their punishment is met and they serve their time stay out of prison and not commit any? Can't we just do both?
I guess.
Okay. So
I
then
I don't. My problem is the punishment thing, right?
So is your problem? So would you say that there should be no punishment at all, or would you say that your problem isn't the fact that there is punishment, but what the punishment is?
The whole thing about punishment altogether, right?
Okay.
Because I I raised my two daughters. There was no actual like punishment, right? When they did things wrong, we sat down and talked to them and discussed things. There was never any spanking. There was never grounding. It was always a discussion, and we worked through things and find out why they did something. There was never any punishment. So I could see there's ways to do things without punishing someone. Punishing someone is just something that people do because they feel slighted and they want to get back. Retaliation.
Okay. I'm not sure one can infer from the example, disciplining children and applying that across the whole board with people who commit crimes, especially heinous ones. So I'm not sure I can go with you all the way there. And on top of that, even if the motive is, for some people, selfish, just because that's more of an attack on the motive and not the argument. I think the argument is that if somebody creates more evil in the world, then they have an obligation of taking a proportional amount of the evil in the world and having that evil met on them.
I don't see them adding evil to the world.
You don't? Okay. Let's see. So when a rapist or when a rapist, for example, or when a serial killer does something on what they're doing, you don't think that some measure of evil needs to be exacted on them as well? Like, you don't think that the victim believes that? And if so, how is that any more dignified than the idea of just letting people rot in prison? So, like, you're asking us to have mercy and pity on heinous killers, but at the same time, you're saying that people who just want that sort of thing are just acting selfish, or have some kind of personal grudge they just need to get over. It seems to me that the issue is with the criminal and not with the people who want a measured degree of vengeance enacted upon them.
That's the thing, right? They want a measured degree of vengeance acted upon the criminal.
Right.
Right. I mean, criminal did an act against one person. It didn't. Yeah, it affected that person, but it didn't affect the world. Okay? It didn't spread out. Maybe that one person, and there's stuff that goes on all across this world that we never hear anything about. It doesn't affect us. It's not affecting like the world. It's not adding evil.
I'd say an innocent person being raped is definitely adding an evil to the world. I mean, it's fairly hard for me to see how it is. And it's very hard for me to consider how I shouldn't care to want their cries for justice met out. Like why should, if I don't care about them, why should I give far less of a care to the criminal who's getting punished?
Who said anything about not caring about the victim?
If we are caring about them, then we should definitely consider whether or not they want to see that criminal face a proportional amount of the evil that they themselves have met out to the world and to the rest of us.
and figure out.
Would you be willing to withhold punishment from somebody who acted harm onto you, even to your close family members, like, um, can like your daughters, for example?
I try not to, but I'm ready to step up and fight, right?
Right.
I haven't been in a fight since high school. I've stepped up into people's faces, and I try not to. If some people have done things to me, right, and I never expected to be harmed in any way or punished, right? I understand that certain people can't control themselves, need to be separated from the rest of society. Ones who can't control themselves be allowed back into society, and what they've done is forgiven, right?
So I think that right there tells me that you are somebody who knows that you need to, at certain times, you need to step up and fight and exact violence when it is right and just, or given a
No,
proper
I don't.
circumstance. Wait,
I don't think.
We might not.
No, I don't know. I don't think it's right and just. It's the anger. I have anger, and sometimes, yeah, anger builds up, and just a thing of violence of wanting to hurt someone, right? I know it's not the correct action to do.
Okay, you know what? And that's where sometimes we might act against our own beliefs. Like, as a Christian, I've done that too. I sometimes I can't even hold myself up to the standards I want. However, I think that there is something that is not only natural but necessarily so about wanting to exact vengeance, because it not only protects yourself, it protects the weak. There's a great poem by Hilaire Belloc which goes, Pale Ebenezer thought it wrong to fight, but Buffalo Bill who killed him had thought it right. The idea was that if good men don't step up and exact violence in certain ways, then there seems to be a greater injustice, not of people not being pacifists, but of evil being done and being spread throughout the world. And in terms of separating people from society, I can think of really no greater degree of punishment and retribution than exile. In fact, that was one of the main ways of dealing with people in the Bible. We read about death penalties, but exile and social death was actually a far worse punishment. I'll let you have the last word because Reformed Christian Apologist needs to wrap this up.
Yeah, something's weird is going on because I'm seeing on my thing that it's put just, and it wasn't there before, but now it's put a thing where it says we're at 1 hour and 9 minutes so far, and then it says a 2 hour as if this is like the end of it. So I don't know what that's all about, if somehow I'm limited now on how long I can stream, but I need to figure this out because that can't always be the case sometimes. So
you doing? I know I've heard that one of those the streaming services only get so many hours a month free. Forget which one it was. I've heard that. I don't know if it's
what, OBS?
I don't know. I just heard something about if you don't pay for the subscription, you only get so many streaming hours a month.
That is odd.
So,
no,
as apologist one. As apologist wanted to ask you a question. If you want to take it, that's fine. If you don't,
what's the question?
He wanted to ask whether or not you think it's right for God to forgive murderers.
To forgive murderers?
Yeah, forgive murderers, people who commit heinous actions. Right before their death, they ask for repentance. God forgives them. Would you object to God doing that?
I would not object to God doing that, no.
Oh, but the question was for Bob.
Oh, for Bob. Oh.
Yeah.
I totally misunderstood that. All right, Bob, then.
I think the question was. I think that question is just framed in that way because Bob said he doesn't think that punishment is necessarily um, isn't the right thing to do. So, or retribution is the right thing to do. So I think that's why he asked.
Well, I don't believe the God of the Bible, the Christian God of the Bible exists, but
Hypothetically.
yeah, but to go with that, I would say just to answer that question. I mean, there's so much wrong with it. God created it for it to be that way in the first place. And then He's going to punish people for the way He created them. He's just screwed up to begin with. But I guess, because I believe forgiveness, everyone, right? I forgive murderers too, right? Just if they're going to keep murdering, we just need to separate them. So.
Okay.
But is it wrong for God to forgive murderers? No. I would too. I do understand that a lot of it has to do with the way the person's brain is wired, right? Some of them just have a brain that's wired to operate that way, and there's really not a whole lot they can do, right? My brain's wired to like certain foods, like certain colors, like certain music. Can't choose to like liver. I've tried it in different ways. I don't like the flavor. I don't like the taste. I just can't wake up one morning and say, "Hey, I like liver now, and I'm going to eat it." Right? My brain's wired that it dislikes liver. I can't control that.
Have you ever tried it in a pet?
You know what?
A pate.
A pate.
Pate? No. I like liverwurst. Liverwurst. I don't know if there's liver in it.
I think pate is made of duck liver.
Oh.
No, I've never tried that.
It's considered a very renowned food. It's probably on my bucket list.
Well, there you go. Alright, folks, so that's all that we're going to try to go with. I'm going to see what exactly the issue is with YouTube, why the countdown thing is going on. All of a sudden, I hadn't seen anything in emails that explains it. So, I haven't gotten struck down with a thing that limits us on what we can do on YouTube just yet. But that being said, folks, thank y'all for tuning in with the debate after show. Check the debate that's in the actual description below. Click the link and check it out. And until then, we will see you next time. And hopefully we have a podcast on Thursday on Theological Discussion. So until then, this has been RCA Apologist. Y'all take care.